In the past few weeks, this last month or so, this has been our peak season for weddings here at St. Charles. And we've been blessed to celebrate a number of beautiful weddings here in this space. And so I've got wedding imagery and homilies and stuff going on in my head. And one of the things that when people are drawn together for a wedding, it's probably usually the case that weddings tend to be beautiful, that people try to make them nice. Family and friends get together. It's a happy occasion. People dress up. There's usually special music and perhaps decorations and flowers, all of these different things that make up a wedding. But the true beauty of the wedding, whether it's simple or ornate, isn't in the outward stuff of the wedding. The true beauty of the wedding is when you recognize the deep love of the couple, the bride and the groom. And you can just see it and feel it. And not just that, but the true beauty also shines through when they want to be here, when they desire to do this and seal their covenant before the altar. That's where the beauty shines and what brings tears to our eyes. This image of beauty that is presented to us is not reserved for special occasions. Beauty ought to be something that we find everywhere, that we look for, that we recognize. A few years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I was on a road trip with a friend of mine, and we were traveling in the car for several hours. And of course, you're listening to all these radio songs and stuff on the radio. And as I'm hearing them, at one point, I just stopped and said, "Do you realize how many songs are about angry, bitter breakups?" It's insane. It's like, I hate you. I hope that you suffer. I want you to know what I feel, and so on and so forth. And it just goes on and on and on. And I stopped and I asked myself, when did we stop creating art that expressed beauty? When did we stop creating art that uplifted people instead of art becoming an outlet for all of the mess and garbage in my life? Let me just verbally vomit out what I'm feeling and throw it at you. That's what a lot of the art that surrounds us, whether it's in a movie or television or on the radio, if you take a step back and look at it, it's like, oh my gosh, that's not beautiful. That's something completely different. The Lord takes the disciples, Peter, James, and John, up the mountain today to show them beauty. He wants to show them something beautiful because they're about to sink themselves back down into a world of crucifixion and suffering and pain. And before they get to that, he wants them to realize that there is beauty and that beauty is worth beholding, and in fact is necessary to behold for our being. That he wants to not teach them anything, not say anything to them, but simply to show them his beauty and the beauty of heaven. And so they go up there and they are mesmerized. If you've ever partaken something stunning, something beautiful, a sunset over the ocean, or the majesty of the mountains, or a beautiful landscape, or if you've heard a concert that has moved you, or witnessed a musical, or a portrait in a museum that was just so beautiful that you really didn't have words. You just took it in. You just enjoyed it. You reveled in that beauty. And it gave life. It gives that kind of stuff, gives life to our souls. It lifts us up. It shows us that there is majesty, that there is grandeur in the world around us. And it reminds us to be uplifted rather than to cast down. This is exactly what Jesus did for his disciples. He went up there and he said nothing to them. He didn't speak to them until they got back down to the bottom of the mountain. The only voice they heard was the voice of the Father speaking to them, saying, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." But he's saying nothing. In that moment, they are simply to absorb the beauty, to feast on the beauty, really, to consume that beauty, and to let it transform them from the inside out. But the Father's words to them were poignant because he says, listen to him to prepare them for what they are about to hear when they get to the bottom of the mountain. For we didn't hear it today, it's in the very next part. When they get there, Jesus is going to predict to them that they are on their way to Jerusalem, that there will be a handing over, a suffering, a rejection, death, crucifixion, and a resurrection on the third day. He's going to tell them this, and the Father wants them to hear it, because the Father wants them to be ready for what is coming and to hold on to this vision of beauty. Because when they look up at the cross, when they see Jesus rejected, when they see him beaten, when they see him so bloodied that he no longer looks like a human being, when they see him raised up on the cross, there's nothing beautiful externally in that. But the beauty, remember, isn't in the externals. The beauty is in the spiritual weight that something has. And they will look upon the cross one day, and they will see that is beautiful, that is not ugly, because God's love outweighs all of the hatred and all of the sin that put Christ on that cross. And to see the love of God there, that is beautiful, and it will transform their lives. Peter makes that declaration. Why don't we just build a few tents here, Lord? He wants to take in that beauty. He wants to remember it. And he may be referring to something like the Jewish Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Booths, where it was kind of like the Jewish religious camping experience, that during the year, the Jews took a week and said, let's go pitch tents in the backyard, let's build little shelters, and we're going to move out of our houses, and we're going to live in these tents for a week to remember that we were exiles on a journey for 40 years, and we can take nothing for granted. Because if we forget that, then we forget where we're going, and we forget who we are. And so they made a purposeful attempt to remember. St. Peter wants to make a purposeful moment here to remember what is happening. We can't forget this. We have to remember it. We're being shown this for some reason. What are we supposed to take away? We have to remember. And in our second reading today, we hear his letter, his first-person account of the Transfiguration. We went up the mountain. We saw the glory. We heard the voice. And his injunction then to us is don't forget. Remember. Remember what God has shown you. Remember what God has done for you. Because you're going to come down from this mountain and you're going to find yourself in an ugly world. You're going to find yourself among hatred, among violence, among discord. You're going to find yourself in those places of despair. But we can never forget the beauty of the Lord. Beauty is not something that is reserved for special occasions. Beauty is something that the world needs in order to survive, that we need in order to survive. Beauty is of God, which means it is necessary. And so you and I then are called to be transfigured ourselves and to transfigure others. We must find the beauty within and share it without. We must show that beauty to those around us to uplift people. Be the kind of artists that create something that builds up and uplifts. There's enough people in the world who just want to complain and moan and tear down and whine. We don't need to be those people. We don't need to call up our friends and complain to them. We don't need to whine when our groups get together. We don't need to be the moaners that just verbally vomit all over one another. We want to lift each other up. We want to build each other up, and transfigure the world by beauty. There's a reason why people flock to weddings and are moved by them, because there is a sincere attempt to make it beautiful from within, from without. And so you and I, who are called to the wedding feast of the Lamb daily, not just once, but daily, must demonstrate that beauty to all we meet. The world and God within that world is beautiful. Let it shine so that the whole world might be uplifted to this glory.